Okay. Thank you for attending this weekly virtual training from AFM. AFM volunteers are happy to provide this training to you. You are encouraged to share what you learned from this training with your colleagues. This training is free of charge and does not include a certificate of attendance at this time. The training will be recorded, and when possible, recordings will be available at AFM's YouTube channel for future viewing. Since this is a 1-hour training, we will start with the training. We will invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat feature in Zoom. At the end of the training, AFM's fire safety advocate, Jose, will be hosting a tea time, and you are invited to stay in the network to ask further questions about the training topic or to discuss other pertinent topics to fire service. Please make sure to mute your microphones, and if you have any questions, you may unmute yourself to ask. Jose will get us started with words of encouragement.
Thanks, Amelia. Thank you for that warm introduction, and I'm looking forward to the lesson today, hosted by Chief Brad. Well, as I always do, in just a few minutes, I usually give an encouragement, and today, still on this book that we were provided for by Craig Dack, it's the 90-day of encouragement. It is specifically written for firefighters, and I'd encourage us to actually get to have it. So today, just for about 3 to 5 minutes, I'm going to read this. Anger. Today we're going to learn about, encourage ourselves on anger. Anger is only one letter away from danger. By Andrew Stans, Battalion Chief with a large metro department in HC and FCF international member. This is actually an encouragement written by Battalion Chief Andrew Stans. So in Psalms chapter 37, verse 8, it says, over here it says, let go of anger and leave rage behind. Don't get upset. It will only lead to evil. As a student of the Bible and the fire service, I have seen effective effects of anger in both areas. God's righteous anger for mankind's evil is just, whereas our anger is seldom righteous. I have personally struggled with anger more than any other emotion in my own life. This is Andrew Stans who's saying, we may feel justified in our moment of anger, but our perspective is more like an adrenaline-pumped amateur who gets tunnel vision. And all this is when we are in grave danger. Leaders are held to an even higher standard when it comes to controlling their anger.
Better. Lord, we just thank you for this time together. Thank you for our presenter and for all of our participants who have joined us. So often it can be easy to become angry, to become frustrated, to become scared. And we just pray that in this time of uncertainty, that you will be our guide. And as we go into uncertain situations as firefighters, Lord, pray for safety, pray for assurance, and for clear minds. In your name we pray. Amen. On that note, I want to introduce Brad Banz. Many of you have met Brad in the past, and he's been an instructor for us in both Kenya and in Zambia. So we are so excited for him to join us today, and I'm going to pass it right over to Chief Banz.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Just want to those that may not know me, give a little background. Have, 36 years now, coming up on 36 years in the fire service. All of that time, I've been on a little department here in Colwich, Kansas, which is here in the central U.S. Retired a couple of years ago as their fire chief, and got pulled back in. I still help out with them, and retired 6 years ago as a captain on the Wichita Fire Department, which is close by. And Wichita is a city of about 350,000. So anyway, on that note, We're going to go ahead and get started with our program today, which is entitled Basic Incident Command Systems. On to the program. The objectives for our program here, we have up here. First thing we're going to do are why we should use an incident management system, characteristics of a good incident management system, our terminologies, and we're going to learn how we can use a modular incident management system to scale up and down. So go ahead and move on forward here. There we go. Let's start out with why we need one. Biggest reason is to bring order to a chaotic situation. Okay. Those of you that have spent any time in the emergency services, when we roll into an emergency, there a lot of times it's chaos. So what we want to try to do is to bring order to chaos. So us as first responders, it's our job to do that. So by having an incident management system, we can organize ourselves and we can help bring order to that system. Okay. So the second thing that we have here listed is to help first responders achieve their goals of mitigating the incident. Okay. So by doing that, we can set a set of goals. Okay. And we can achieve those goals, and we can solve that incident in a safe manner. So we might have, for example, at a car wreck, our goals are going to be to get the patient out of the car safely and to treat them and take them to the hospital. So that's our goals. So if we can do that, we've achieved the goals. Okay. This is an example. Okay. The third one is to manage resources more efficiently. Okay. If you have a whole bunch of resources coming out to an incident, you want to make sure that they're all doing their job the most efficiently as possible. Or if you have too many people there or not enough people, you want to make sure that you get the right ones there, or send the ones home that you don't need. Okay. Have them doing what they need to be doing. Okay. And the last one, enabling agencies to work together more efficiently or effectively. Okay. If you have, say, the fire department or the fire brigade and EMS or the ambulance services, and say the police all working together at an incident, you want to make sure that they all get along, that they're all meshing together and working together as effectively as possible. Or if you're working over multiple jurisdictions, if you get a large incident where you have multiple communities working together, you want to make sure that the services from all those communities are working together. That's why it helps to have an incident management system. Okay, so the next thing we want to cover, characteristics of an incident management system. Okay, and when I hit these, I'm taking this from the U.S. National Incident Management System. So what I've touched on are 14 characteristics of the National Incident Management System that the U.S. uses. I've pulled what I consider are the most important ones out of this. This is a really basic basic system or basic coverage that I'm covering on today. Just number one for the time frame. But these are what I consider to be the most important ones that I'm covering with you guys today, just so everybody understands that. Okay, first one, modular organization. Okay, and in an incident management system, it's important to have modular organization. What that means is that it basically is built in a framework that can be built up and down as the incident gets larger or smaller. Okay, it has building blocks. It can be built up or down as that incident gets larger or smaller. Common terminology. Okay, so everybody knows the same terminology no matter where you're at. The terminology is the same. We have that problem in the U.S. For example, in fire trucks, a truck that hauls water, some people call it a tanker. But if you go into the wildfires out in the U.S. that they're having, if you call for a tanker, you're going to get an airplane that drops water. So that's where the common terminology comes in. Okay, so that's why they have a list of people that have put this all together. They have a list of the accepted common terminology. Unified command. Okay, what we talk about with unified command is that you have, when you're working together on an incident, if you have multiple agencies working together, they will work together to have one unified command structure. In other words, they work together to make sure that that incident is commanded together to have a good outcome. Now, you could have several different agencies. They're all going to have a say in the outcome. They're all going to have, how can I put this? They're all going to come together with representatives that have, yes, I guess you would have a say, or with representatives in the outcome of the operation. But there's also going to be one incident commander that has the final say. And that's what you would call a unified command, if that makes sense. And we can talk about that later when we have our question and answer period. Okay, unity of command and chain of command. Okay, so what we talk about, what we mean in unity of command and chain of command is that there is one incident commander, and that's what I was talking about, trying to get to with the unified command. There's one incident commander, and you have a chain of command where everybody reports to one person up the chain of command. So everybody knows who they report to. They only have one person that they report to up the chain of command, clear to the top, to that incident commander. And that's what you call unity of command. Okay, a manageable span of control. And this is really important. And this is one reason why, a very important reason why we have the incident management system or incident command system. It's so that we can make sure that we don't have too many people out there, that one person is trying to control. Okay, so that's why we institute an incident management system. That's so we can manage that span of control. And what that means is that you try to make sure that no one person is in charge of more than 7 people. And usually we try to keep that in a range of 3 to 7 people, okay? With a good number being 4 to 5, okay? We try to keep that 4 to 5 people if possible, okay? That's reporting to the next person up the chain of command. Okay, accountability. So accountability means knowing where all people are at one time. That's a big part of safety. Okay, so that's a very important reason why we have that incident management system. We have to account for all people out on an incident scene. Okay, we want to make sure that everybody is safe out there and accounted for. Very important. Finally, management by objectives. Okay, and we're gonna touch on that. And that means setting goals and objectives for the incident. I'm going to touch on that here in a second. Okay, so management by objectives. Okay, on every incident, the incident commander is going to set specific goals to be able to mitigate that incident. Okay, so that's why management by objectives is important. Okay, and then by setting those goals, then you can develop a strategy and tactics to make sure that those goals get solved. And that's no matter how big, no matter how small that incident is. Okay, if you roll up, if you're a couple of units that roll up on a small incident, or you roll up on a major incident with that's going to require, 20 or 30 fire trucks or fire trucks and ambulances. Those that were in Nairobi last fall when we did our mock incident with the airplane crash, where we had the fire department and EMS involved with the plane crash. You're going to develop a set of goals and then develop a strategy and tactics. Okay, and that's what we mean by management by objectives. By doing that, then you can set up your incident management system. You can set up your structure, your management structure, to help meet the goals of managing the incident. Okay, and that's what we're going to start getting into as we go on through the rest of the program. Okay, so what I want to start doing is going through kind of the modular building blocks of an incident, and we're going to start off small. We're going to start off with a motor vehicle collision. Okay, so you guys get called out to a motor vehicle collision. Okay, when you get there, you have a fire engine and an ambulance that is sent to this call. All right. When you get there, you have to have an incident commander. No matter the size of the incident, you always have an incident commander that gets staffed on any incident. That position always gets staffed. Okay. When you staff it, you can see where I'm running my cursor here. You want to try to write this down, especially as the incident grows. You can usually keep this in your head on something like this. But as you start charting this, when it gets bigger, you want to chart who's in charge of that position, okay? And this one, the officer on engine 1 is going to be your incident commander. We shortened that to IC, okay? So engine 1's officer is the incident commander. And then you also have ambulance 1 there on the scene, okay? So when we get on that incident, engine 1's officer has to make some decisions about what needs to take place. They have to set their goals and set the strategy and tactics for what needs to take place. So on a motor vehicle collision, you're going to have patients, and you may have possibly a entanglement that might be occurring where you have to remove the patient from the vehicle. So some of your goals might be to remove the patient from the vehicle. That would be one goal. And to treat the patient, that would be another goal. So that's, once you do that, then that's the assignments that have to be made to your different crews. Okay. So we're going to expand on that a little bit. And when we got to the incident, we determined that there were multiple patients, that there was a matatu, actually 2 matatus that got tied up, and there were multiple patients. So we had to call for additional units. Okay, so engine 1's officer, whoops. See, how do I back up here? Yes. There we go. So we determined that there were additional patients on this scenario, and that we had to disentangle some people. So we needed additional resources. So we called, engine 1's officer called and asked for additional resources. So we have an additional engine, and the tender I'm referring to, and I may be wrong on my terminology, but I'm referring to a rescue tender that has the rescue tools on it. And you guys can correct me when we're in T afterwards. And then we have several ambulances that got dispatched. So I have I think I have 8 different units. So because of this scenario, we've gone over our span of control because we try to keep it at 7, I believe, right? So is that manageable for our incident commander? And I'm going to say no. So what can we do? Go on to the next slide. Are there any problems with this command structure? And I'm going to say yes. So how can we fix the problems that might be occurring with this command structure? And by the way, each one of those units on there are what we call single resources. That's one of the terms in the terminology. Each one of those units is called a single resource. So how can we fix a problem that might be occurring in the command structure? And we're going to go and find out here in a second. So what we've done to fix that, to make it more manageable, is to assign groups, okay? So the chief heard about this. So the chief responded out and he assumed command from Engine 1's officer, okay? So the chief came, and now he is the incident commander. And we assign what's called a group, okay? And a group, it divides specific responsibilities for a specific function, and it's managed by a supervisor. So in other words, we have a fire group now. You can see the two engines and the tender are now being managed by Engine 1's officer. And then you have the EMS group, which are all the ambulances, and they're being managed by Ambulance 1's officer, okay? So, and the chief needs to make some decisions about what his goals are, okay? Because it's an expanding scenario. We've determined that we have some people in the matatus that are entangled, so we have to do a disentanglement, and then we have multiple patients, so he's going to assign the EMS group to transport those. So that's going to be their responsibility. So that's why we've done what we've done here, okay? Makes it more manageable. Instead of having one person that's in charge of all of that, we now have a manageable span of control, okay? The fire group officer has 3 engine crews reporting to him or her, and the EMS group officer has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units reporting to them, and the chief has 2 officers reporting to him or her, okay? So we now have a manageable span of control. Hope that makes sense to everyone. Okay, and that's what we call dividing crews into groups, because they have a specific responsibility. That's the fire control group, and that's the EMS group. Okay. So the next example we're going to do is a bushfire. Okay, we get 8 engines and the fire chief that get dispatched to a bushfire. Okay. So the chief sends 4 of those engines over to the west side of the road to start fighting the fire on the west side of the road, and into a large field over there. And then engines 5 through 8, you can see they get sent over to fight the fire on the east side of the road. Okay. So that's our scenario there. So the first problem that we have, what are the problems that we face with this fire? So the first problem is that we already have a span of control fire, or span of control problem, correct? Because we have 8 units, and that's already over our span of control for the chief, right? And what about because the incident spread out? Is the chief going to have problems controlling everybody with all of those engines spread out into 2 large fields, into a large area? Probably so. So the second question is, will the incident commander be able to use groups? Why or why not? And if you look at the definition of using a group, that's for the definition of a group is for a specific purpose, okay? So they're all fire control. So technically, you have them still thrown into one group, right? So probably not. So what we want to do, we can do this in a different manner, and I'm going to show you a little different manner that we can do it. Okay. So what we're going to do, there's another terminology for us to learn, and that's a division. Okay. In the division, we can divide the incident geographically instead of into a group. Okay. So divisions divide the incident geographically, okay? And they're led by a supervisor, and you can have up to 7 single resources assigned to a supervisor in a division, okay? So remember, we said that engines 1 through 4 were on the west side of the road. So we made engine 1's officer the West Division supervisor, and we made engine 5's officer the East Division supervisor. Okay. So now we have 4 engines. Whoops. We have 4 engines reporting. Darn it. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. We have 4 engines that are reporting to one supervisor, and 4 engines reporting to another supervisor. And then those 2 supervisors are reporting to the chief. And that's a lot more of a manageable span of control. Okay. Let's move on. So, looks like our fire got a lot bigger. Show our fire here on the side. So the fire got a lot bigger. So the incident commander ordered 15 more fire engines to meet the demands, okay? Because that's another thing that the incident command system is all about. His goal is to catch up and to meet the demands of the fire. So he ordered 15 more, he or she ordered 15 more engines. So part of the strategy of the incident commander is to protect structures that were in the way of the fire. So how can the incident commander change that incident command structure to meet those needs? So that's a lot more engines, a lot more to manage by doing that, right? So we're gonna do one more, show you guys one more thing here. Okay. So this is what we call, can you guys, I don't know if you guys can see this or not. We're going to talk about branches a little bit. And what a branch is, okay, you can see your divisions right here. We had to assign, okay, we got engines, we had engines 1, 2, 3, and 4 with your West Division here. You have engines 5, 6, 7, and 8 that are in your East Division. So we kept those the same, right? But because we had so many extra units that came in, and that was a lot of extra units to manage by just having all those divisions, we decided that we would add a branch. And a branch is just an extra added layer that's in between the division level and the chief level, where if you fully expand it, you could have what's called the operations section chief in a fully expanded system, and we're not going to talk about that today, and the chief. Okay. So if you look, we assigned some more divisions. You assigned your Northwest Division, all of those units. But then look, over here on branch 1, we also assigned, because we said part of our goals of the chief is to have structural protection. So we assigned a structural protection group over here on this branch. So these guys right here, their job is to do nothing but structural protection. So there are some houses in the way. Their job is going to be to protect houses, okay? Because they're a group. Okay, so then you have your North Division, then your East Division that are still there, and your Northeast Division, okay? They're all assigned to branch 2 and to branch 1. Okay, so the branches, I don't know if you guys can see this or not, but basically your branches can be assigned geographically. They can be assigned by task. So you can have an EMS branch, you can have a fire branch, or you can have them assigned by jurisdiction. So you can assign them, for example, as a city location would be an example of that. I'm starting to run. Okay, so review a little bit here. What we talked about was using an incident management system, why it's important. And we learned a little bit about the characteristics of an incident management system. And then we used some models. We used order models, talked about incident management or incident command terminology, and how we can scale them up or down. And then we learned about using the goals and strategies and how they're important in determining the needs of the ICS structure. So, and this was really quick. And with that, we can go back to the goals or go back to the models and stuff. And I will open the floor up for you guys to ask questions because we moved through this pretty quickly. So any questions? Questions from the floor? Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering if, in case of the bushfire, when a specialist comes in, for example, a weather specialist or maybe a geologist, where does he get fixed in this branch or group?
I heard part of that, a bushfire where there was a specialist. And I didn't catch the rest of that. I didn't hear the rest of that. What was the rest of the question?
Errol, could you repeat your question?
Yes.
Yes, let me repeat. I was wondering where a specialist can be fixed. For example, a weather specialist or maybe a geologist in this bushfire solution so that you can manage a span of control.
That is a good question. So that's where you would have, depending upon the size of the incident and how fully developed the incident command system is, it would depend on where they would plug into the system at. They would either report directly to the incident commander, or if it was a fully developed system where like in the last, let me go back to the last slide here. Whoops. Or we have the last slide, and you have the fully developed system. You would have what's called the operations section chief, and then you have different sections. You'd have like a planning section. If it was a fully developed incident, then they would plug into the planning section. But in a smaller one, like this one, they would report directly to the chief or to the incident commander. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
That's a good question. Any other questions?
I have a question. Huh?
Please go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, go ahead.
Now, I'm from Washington, D.C.
Yes, Timothy.
We have only one engine. Hello? Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, I look at the span. If I have an engine, which is 1,000 liters, which when I'm using it within 1 minute, I don't have any waters. Now I have a Bosa, which is 10,000 liters. We have 6 sub-counties. So into an area that I want to deal with the incident command system, how do I go about the same? Because if you look at the system, it is a little bit jangled up. How do I go about it? Because I've seen there are branches, chief branches, 1, 2, 3. We have only one system, that is one engine, as per to say.
Okay, I think what you're saying is you don't have all of the resources for all of. Is that what you're trying to say, Timothy? If I understand this.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a very good question, and that's the reason I presented all of this is I know that in many areas of Kenya and in other areas of Africa, you don't have all of this. But this is just to give you some examples of how the system would work. But you can go even to the very smallest example, the very first example, just of how you can make the system work for you, and just out making a response with an ambulance, for an example, of how you can make the ICS system work. Does that make sense?
Hello. Hello.
Are you there?
Hello. I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead.
Unity of command and chain of command. Hello.
Hello?
Yes, we go ahead.
Okay. My question is about the unity of command and chain of command. I would like Mr. Brand to tell us the commanding orders. How to command.
How to command the branch?
Oh, how to command the branch? So the branch is just going to be a position that is in the chain above the division leaders or the group leaders and below the chief. It's just another step in the line. If you have a large number of resources, okay? It's just to maintain the span of control, okay? It would be just the same as being a division or group leader if you have a larger number of people. Does that make sense? It's to maintain the span of control at 3 to 7. Okay. And actually here, yeah, the branch has 1, 2, 3 people reporting to him. Does that make sense?
I've got another question.
Go ahead.
Can you talk briefly about demobilization?
Can you talk about demobilization, Brad?
Oh, demobilization? That's a good question. So, as the incident gets smaller, you're not going to need as many resources. When you demobilize, you can start taking these resources away. The incident commander will start determining in their plan. They will start talking to the branch leaders. The incident commander will start talking to the branch leaders, who will then start talking to the division leaders and the group leaders about the status of the incident. Okay. And once they determine that the incident has become more stable, then they can start demobilizing resources. And then this incident can start collapsing down, where they can start taking away the branch leaders. Most likely, once they start releasing resources, they may collapse these branch leaders back down to where they only need divisions. Once they start sending home some of these resources, they may start reassigning resources into different divisions. And then eventually, whoops, keep doing that. As the incident gets smaller and smaller, does that make sense? They might even send a whole division home. They might say, we don't need this Northeast division. They might send the whole thing home. Or they might take 2 engines out of the Northeast division and 2 engines out of the North division and make one less division. So, but as they use less resources, the structure will collapse down to where eventually they won't need the branches anymore. There will be less divisions out there. So does that make sense as far as demobilization? Do you understand that?
Yes. Thank
Okay. Any other questions?
There's a question in the chat. What are the major functional areas of the ICS?
Oh, major functional areas. That would be your command, which is up here, and then your finance, your logistics, your operations, and your planning sections. Okay. And this is really basic, okay? The only one that we really got into is your operations section today, okay? This is all what we call your operations section. And then the chief is also going to have a staff, the command section is also going to have a couple extra people that we didn't talk about. He's going to have a safety officer and then what's called a public information officer and a liaison officer that we didn't talk about. But yeah, a full staff or the fully staffed incident command system. That's your 5 functional areas. That's a good question. Somebody's been through incident command before. So, good question.
We probably have time for one more question before we switch over to the tea time with Jose, if anyone else has another question.
There's another question in the chat. Is administration part of the ICS?
That would depend on what you're considering to be administration. They would have to, I guess, be a little more specific on that as far as what they're considering administration. I don't know exactly what they're considering to be administrative functions. I mean, there are some administrative functions out there you know, in your finance, and all of the groups really, they're in your finance group, and your logistics, and in your planning especially. There are some there's some administrative functions there, but no administrative function per se. So if that answers your question, there are administrative functions there that you have to do, but no specific administrative function, if that makes sense. Any other? Guess we're coming right up on the hour, aren't we?
I have a question.
Okay.
There is a notion about, not even a notion, I believe it's a standard, that the first boots on ground or the first responding team, their leader automatically takes up and become the IC of an incident, right? And then as the incident escalates, maybe you're supposed to transfer the roles to the next IC. And then
Yes, that's correct. And we kind of, I guess we kind of showed that a little bit. We'll go back to the very, very first one here. With the motor vehicle collision. Okay, on the motor vehicle collision, we showed that the officer on the engine took command. And then as the incident grew, okay, you still had all of those units there, and the engine's officer was still in charge. But then the chief showed up, and the chief assumed command from the engine's officer and made engine one's officer the group leader. So that's a good question. Yes, and that's how it works many times. So that's a very good question. And that's one of the great things about a good modular system like that, is that as it grows, the chief will come in and the chief can take it, and then a higher ranking chief can come in and take over and reassign that chief to a different role. That chief might get assigned as like a branch director, so, or even like the operations section chief. So does that make sense? Good question.
So I just want to take a minute to say thank you to our instructor, Brad, and to all of you for participating in today's training. We'll be posting the recording online soon for future reference, and we ask that you complete our online evaluation so we can continue to improve our trainings. Next week's training is with Jason Braun, and you'll be able to use the same login link for next week's training if you're able to attend. Feel free to invite other firefighters to register and attend our trainings. And thank you. And remember, a better fire service starts with you. Feel free to stay on for the tea time with Jose, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you so much, Amelia, for that, and also thank you, Brad, for an awesome presentation.
Thank you.
We're always thankful. You're welcome. We're always happy to have you in these sessions. Thank you also for staying over for the question and answer. And members, I really thank you for finding time and having the commitment to always being available for these classes. These classes are helpful even on the fire ground, not only just in class, but when you get on the fire ground, you get to learn more.